mystery. Champion of right swoops out of the shadows, darkening on the night.
Good morning, Mr. Stone. First of all, I express my pleasure to see you. So, Mr. Stone, let's start from beginning. Why animation? What brought you to animation, and what were the reasons for your current profession?
Well, I just growing up, my dad had wanted to be a newspaper cartoonist, and so there were a lot of cartoon books and art books. I mean, he went into advertising and marketing, so he didn't fulfill his dream, but he had all these books that I grew up with, reading about these famous comic strip artists and the comic strips they did. And then I was fascinated by animation too. And he had a few books about animation. So I loved it from the beginning. And then as going into high school, though, I felt like, well, the only place worth working is Disney Studios, because at the time, everybody else animating was just doing very limited animation for television. And what fascinated me was full acting animation and all of that. And I said, well, the only place worth working is Disney, and they've got all their guys, which at the time was absolutely true, because a lot of the animators that Walt Disney started with were still there. His 9 old men, at least 8 were there, I think. As I moved through high school into college, they actually had started a training program which was basically just one of the veterans, Eric Larson, who would just work with people, and they would have 8 weeks or 4 weeks really to do a little animated test. And if you survived that, you did a second animated test, and then you became an in-betweener going into movies. So it just so happened that my girlfriend at the time, her roommate or suite mate was the daughter of a famous Disney storyman, veteran ride designer, ex Atencio. And so she knew about this training program and who I should call. So I did. And I wasn't even an art major at the time. I had just been one for 1 year. And that I hurriedly got a portfolio together, that I did in a matter of weeks, pulling stuff together, and went in and was accepted. So 3 days after graduation, I started my first test at Disney Studios and luckily survived. And I was a terrible in-betweener, almost got fired because of it. And my girlfriend became my wife. So.
But you started with comics. Is it true?
Not really. I mean, I came up with ideas and sometimes post things like that once the internet was around. But I never came up with a comic that I created. Well, you know what? In high school, I published like 3 humor newspapers, which was basically a little bit of self-published, handed out to my friends or sold it for a nickel or something. It was an excuse to have a reason to do drawings. But really, during that time, I was writing a lot of the material, which served me well when I eventually went to Disney and certainly in TV animation, because I had been writing as well as drawing. And in fact, at Disney Features, I moved from the animation side into, although I'm not credited, but like into story on Fox and Hound, which was the movie going on then. And, in fact, the summer of my junior year of college, I thought, when I graduate next year, real life begins, whatever that is. So I'm going to take this summer to try to become a cartoonist. And I just came up with gag cartoons to send to magazines. And those cartoons really don't exist anymore, that there's no market for them, or a very small one. But that did make me think of humor and gag ideas, and it was about getting a bunch of ideas there, brainstorming. Again, that turned out to be perfect training for storyboarding on a feature film, and certainly in TV animation, when it was about thinking visually and coming up with humor beyond the dialogue. So it was a weird path I took, but it all seemed to be focusing me toward the end. But yeah, my comic strips were purely self-published things in a high school paper.
Your half series, half comics character has traveled to the world and fight for justice. It was the example for children, also for young generation. And where did the idea of Darwin Duck come from? What was the general reason?
Well, I was ordered to by my boss. Jeffrey Katzenberg at the time was head of motion pictures and animation and all of that. And they liked the name 00 Duck, which is a James Bond reference. And he said, we had done an episode of DuckTales called that. And he liked which featured Launchpad McQuack. And he liked the sound of the title, but he says, I need a new character, because their idea was if you had a interesting title, maybe a few more people would come and check out your show. And then it was up to you to keep them there with a quality show. So we started out as a spy. My first pitch didn't go well. He says it needs heart to it. It needs some emotion. And that's when he came up with the idea of giving him a daughter to raise, who refused to stay at home. That was part of it. And then as far as how Darkwing changed, it turned out we didn't have the rights to use the name 00 Duck, because the people doing the James Bond movies, that was invented for Ian Fleming's books and used in their movies. And they let, every cartoon show did a spy parody at one time or another, and many live action things. That didn't bother them. But when they opened up the Hollywood trade papers and there was a double page advertisement from Disney saying 00 Duck, they said, that's too far. That will hurt our franchise, because they were trying to, invigorate the Bond. I forgot where they were, which Bond they were at, but they were going to make a big push in the movies, and they didn't want this cartoon character making fun of it. So we had to change the name, and we had a contest, and someone pitched Alan Burnett, who eventually went to do the animated Batman series. He came up with the name Darkwing. I said, oh, that's perfect for the person he thinks he is. And then I'm going to add duck to it, because that makes it sound sillier, which is closer to its truth. Now, of course, for you guys, he was named Black Cloak, or, he was an entirely different name. So, but still, for us, starting that character, one of my story editors said, well, he's wearing a tuxedo with a mask and a cape and a little hat. And he said, that looks more like an old time pulp hero from the old radio shows like The Shadow and the Green Hornet. And that's what gave me a different way of approaching characters instead of the typical James Bond parodies. But there were too many characters, and we finally got it down to just our 3 stars. And that's what went. And once we lost the 00 name, even though spies and were part of the show, because that gave us more stories to do, I went back to the comics I grew up with, which were a very silly time of American comic books that we call the Silver Age. And it was just wild stories, crazy covers, and all that I loved. And that's what ended up in Darkwing.
You mean that Darwin Duck, the hybrid of James Bond and the Batman?
Funny, I made the decision. I said, that's too funny to keep in this one show. Give that to Darkwing. And I had them rewrite that part of the script and all the scripts that were already done. And that's become a huge part of the character is his silly phrases. I am the bubble gum that sticks to the shoe of crime, that sort of thing. So it's a mix of many things. Just in general, those silly superhero comics that I grew up with, and a little bit of spies, and just the feeling of those old pulp heroes. I mean, that's why he doesn't wear a Superman suit. He has that, a regular, double-breasted suit and all that. That comes more from the old radio heroes.
In general, the Disney studio has making remakes of popular animated films in film format in recent years. What do you think about that? And can we keep popular of this film in new formats?
I don't know. To me, it upsets a lot of fans, but for me, it's all about it. Right, wrong. To me, you get your ideas from anywhere, and if you say I'm going to get the idea from the animated show, that's fine creatively. Now, when they do a almost scene for scene duplication, except it's human beings or I guess more realistic animated characters is what it turns out to, that's silly. But if you take it, Disney did a movie, Maleficent, and that kind of took the Sleeping Beauty story and told it from the villain's point of view and really gave her an interesting story. And I thought that was great because you were inspired by something and then did something totally original. The Lion King one, it stayed too close to it. It's kind of like, why are you doing that? It's like, we're going to put out the same movie, but we're going to color it different, So to me, it's not right and wrong. It's just, and it's really, did you do a good job or not? Some things get done over and over. James Bond done over and over, and just like a series. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles kept being made over and over in different TV shows and movies because they always sold a lot of toys. But it wasn't until this last one came out, here it was called Mutant Mayhem, I think, that they really made the turtles into teenagers, that they acted like teenagers, not superheroes. They had, and I thought that was brilliant. So it took something you'd seen 100 times before and just made it fresh and new and gave it a new style. That to me is a big success. And if you say, why do it again? Why not do something new? Well, I had an idea for this. Should I not follow my creative idea there? It's just because something new isn't naturally better. You can say, I'm going to do a brand new thing instead of a reboot or remake. But if you do a stinky film, who cares? Are you going to do a good film? Are you going to do a good film based on something else? That's great. So I'm always open to it. I think it's silly to be slavish to it. So is it right? Is it wrong? No, I don't put that sort of judgment on it.
Martin Scorsese criticized Hollywood cinema. I mean, Marvel, also DC franchise. I will quote from his article. He said that today, information technology separates us from real cinema. And how would you comment this point today? Is this approach similar for animation?
To me, it's a 2D animation is a different art form, and I miss seeing it. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the look of it when it's done well and all that. And when you blend certain computer elements into it, it makes for great movies. CG is a different brush, so it's a different type of movie. They call it animated. I don't know why they call a Pixar movie animated, but they don't call a live action Lion King animated, or a new Planet of the Apes film. Why isn't that animated? Because there's a few humans in it, but all those apes are, yes, they're motion capture, but then animators go in and do things to the image of the actors and really make them emote, really turn them into things. It's just not automatic. So to me, I miss 2D animation. I mean, there's a lot on television, of course, but you don't get the budget enough to really do that classic Disney acting. And then CG has made animation into just another movie, in that there are good ones and there are boring ones. You know, they've kind of settled on being just for kids, although every once in a while they push that boundary a little bit. But it's no longer as special as it was. I would not have imagined when I was starting at Disney that there would be an animated film coming out that I wouldn't go see. But now there's just so many of them, I make my judgments like any other movie. He's being a little crotchety old man there. To me, it's like, again, I tend to enjoy all of those, but some transcend that. They are, yes, they're superheroes, but they're talking about human nature. You know, this character cares for that character. You know, they don't say anything, but I can tell that they're very close, you know, whether it's brother and sister or some budding romance or something, or there's tension there. That's still movie making. The fact that they have big action set pieces doesn't make it not a movie. It's just a certain kind of movie. I mean, other things, I mean, yeah, you can make a small, tiny superhero movies, and there have been, you know, independent ones that get into the horror genre or more comedic. So you can say this studio tends to output a lot. You can say, boy, those Marvel movies just keep on coming. They're all the same. Well, not the best of them. They're not the same. You can say, like, oh, I really enjoyed that one. That's really fresh. And that one, no. It was like, I love the first Ant-Man movie. I thought it was really different from the other Marvel movies. Had a great spirit of fun. The last one, it just was overblown. I missed that. I wasn't involved with the characters. And it did terribly, you know, or disappointing anyway. So it's all about the filmmakers. And I think now they are, from what I understand, Marvel is doing less of we're trying to organize this big universe by committee, or Kevin Feige anyway. And it's more about, let's give our filmmakers more of a say. Now, they've done that in the past, like Eternals, very much that director's movie didn't connect with the audience. But at least it's like letting them give a taste to it. James Gunn, when he took on Guardians of the Galaxy, that was space as we had never seen it before. I mean, up till that, all space looked the same. It was like Star Wars and Star Trek were kind of blending together. You know, Star Trek was bright and shiny. Star Wars is dusty and used. And Guardians of the Galaxy was a whole new space, was colorful. There was a sense of humor. It played rock and roll. It was, you know, he brought a whole fresh take to it. And that was in the Marvel movies, and yet a totally different, you know, situation and a sense of entertainment.
Mr. Stone, what was the reason for end of show?
No, it's just actually at the time, especially the Disney Afternoon, made a big splash on television markets. It was sold in syndication, which means there wasn't one network deciding about it. You would sell it to different TV stations around the world. So the business model was, we're only doing 65 episodes because that's as many episodes as you need. I don't know who decided this, to give you like 13 weeks of 5 episodes a week, and you could just repeat them over and over and mix them up and all of that. However, one of the networks here in America, ABC, was interested in the show, and they wanted 13 episodes of their own. So that let us do 13 more episodes. And then they wanted a second season, so we got to do another 13. So all in all, we ended up doing 90 episodes. And then again, it wasn't that we decided to end it. Although I suppose if the network said, oh, we want a third season, then we would have done more. But the plan was only to do 65, and we ended up doing 90s. So it was all a business calculation. You know, we were only supposed to do this many, and we got to do more.
Do you think the audience taste has changed?
Taste change in that just taste in movies and television changes in general ways because society changes. Animation is no longer a special magic trick that you hardly ever see. I mean, it used to take Disney 5 years to do a movie because they only had, you think, oh, it's huge, it's Disney. No, when I went there, there were only 55 people in the animation department, not counting the people painting the cells. So it hardly ever came out. So when it did come out, it was like, oh, one of those things, those animated things, we're going to go see it. That's all gone because we have so much around us. And some do well. I mean, the last few didn't do so well. And then last weekend, Inside Out 2, which is a sequel to the movie Inside Out, when you're in the head of a teenage girl or a younger than teenage girl, seeing how her emotions go back and forth. The sequel just came out. They thought it would make in the United States like $80 million. It made $155 million. Everybody said, oh, they saved Hollywood. Who knows why that broke through and suddenly became huge. I think the audience, in some ways, the audience has changed because of video games. I think when you the editing of a movie changes because especially the younger audience is used to seeing things faster and faster. Also sometimes so the cutting gets faster. Also, there's a thing where you can put things on the screen just for fun because ultimately somebody's going to be watching on their computer and they're going to freeze frame and see every little detail in the background. You can't make a movie just for that, but it's another layer you can throw in. But it's a hard time. I mean, I don't go to movies as much as I used to because I'm old. So it takes a lot to get me to go out to see something. But I went out and saw the last Planet of the Apes movie. I was really impressed with it. I just thought it gave you stuff to think about, and you forget that it's animated, and you're just reacting to the characters. And to me, that's the magic of movies, and that sucks you in. So I don't know if it's the audience or the movie makers or combination of both. I enjoy it when people experiment and try different things.
Yeah, of course. Mr. Stone, thank you for interesting interview. First of all, I'm impressed from our conversation. I'm impressed. Mr. Stone, thank you for interesting interview. I'm really impressed and proud to express my gratitude on behalf of my generation to all of your creations. My pleasure. I hope to see you in LA. Thank you in advance.